Dawn breaks over the Trail of Tears National Historic Trail, a veil of fog clinging to the earth like a reluctant memory. The path stretches silent through Georgia's rolling hills, interrupted only by the faint hum of a distant highway where semis thunder past without pause. In this quiet stretch, marked by a weathered sign etched with Cherokee syllabary, the air holds the weight of absence. Whose voices rise from this ground today? In a nation dotted with monuments to liberty and holidays honoring progress, the question cuts sharp: does America still hear the cries from the Trail of Tears? A voiceover emerges steady and probing, framing the title as a challenge hurled into the present. Monuments rise for fallen soldiers and founding fathers, yet here, amid plaques half-read by passers-by, the echoes of a forced exodus challenge the story of expansion as destiny. Layered beneath modern tires on asphalt, a sound motif stirs imagined footsteps crunching on frozen soil. Cherokee words lifted in prayer, their cadence broken by the rote recitation of schoolchildren from a textbook page. The Trail of Tears, they intone, was a sad event in American history. The words hang thin as the fog lifting, revealing how deeply the phrase endures while its anguish fades. Bridge the present to the past through a contemporary Cherokee voice, that of Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin, Jr. of the Cherokee Nation, who speaks with measured fire about removal's shadow. The Trail of Tears is not ancient history, he declares in a recent address. It shapes our policies, our identity, our fight for sovereignty today. His words cut to footage of citizens on city streets asked what they know of the Trail of Tears. Responses tumble out: a sad march west, something about Indians moving. Few summon a treaty's name, a precise date, or the leader who penned protests in elegant script. One woman shrugs: "It was bad, right, but we learned about it in school." The core tension crystallizes. Removal bears a familiar label, yet its depths elude. America recalls the phrase, but does it hear the sovereign nation's roar against erasure? Establish the historical frame with policy as the unyielding scaffold. The Indian Removal Act of 1830 stands as the legal cornerstone signed into law by President Andrew Jackson on May 28 after narrow congressional passage. The Senate approved it 28-19, the House 102-97. This measure empowered the president to negotiate exchanges of lands east of the Mississippi River for territories west, ostensibly voluntary, yet laced with coercion. What unfolded as the Trail of Tears formed one thread in a broader tapestry targeting the Cherokee, Muskogee, Seminole, Chickasaw, and Choctaw nations. Estimates place the total indigenous population uprooted at around 60,000 souls. A period map unfurls in animation, shading tribal nations across the southeastern United States. In earth tones their boundaries firm until overlaid by emerging state lines, and the grid of cotton counties voracious for soil. Key figures emerge in this collision of sovereignties. John Ross, Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation, from 1828. A man of mixed Scottish and Cherokee heritage who navigated Washington corridors with treaties in hand, and law on his tongue, arguing for rights enshrined in prior pacts. Arrayed against him, Andrew Jackson and Georgia officials, their drive fueled by land hunger, the sprawl of slavery, and the gleam of gold discovered in Cherokee territory near Dahlonega in 1828. Georgia's gold lottery of 1832 doled out claims to white settlers treading roughshod over Cherokee deeds. The legal flashpoint ignites with Worcester versus Georgia in 1832, where the United States Supreme Court under Chief Justice John Marshall ruled that Georgia lacked authority to extend its laws over Cherokee lands, affirming federal primacy and tribal sovereignty as a domestic dependent nation. Yet, the decision faltered in enforcement. Jackson, ever the enforcer of his will, reportedly quipped that Marshall's ruling carried no bayonets to back it, a sentiment that emboldened state encroachments. Set the emotional stakes by sketching Cherokee life in the 1820s and 1830s, thriving towns like New Echota with frame houses and frame-field schools teaching in English and Cherokee syllabary. A printing press rolling out the Cherokee Phoenix newspaper. And a constitution adopted in 1827 mirroring the United States' own. This was no vanishing race, but a nation forging ahead, bound by treaties from Hopewell in 1785 to Holston in 1791, each pledging perpetual peace and land guarantees. Removal's shadow loomed to rend families from hearths, graveyards, from ancestors' ceremonial grounds, from songs' political councils from their seats. The cries encompassed literal wails of parting and the formal protests of a people pleading their case in halls of power. Act on crests on a mini cliffhanger, the camera lingers in the United States Senate chamber, shadows pooling on mahogany desks as a clerk intones the ratification of the Treaty of New Echota on May 23, 1836, by a margin of 1 vote. More than 15,000 Cherokees had petitioned against it, their names scrolling like a river denied. Whose voice prevailed in that chamber, the majority's plea or the minority's bargain? Deep roots twist back from treaties to the forced choices that scarred the land. The United States and Cherokee had woven a long treaty history from the Treaty of Paris in 1783, acknowledging tribal boundaries, to the compact at New Echota in 1828, where the Cherokee ceded a sliver of land yet retained their core domain in perpetuity. These pacts recognized Cherokee sovereignty, yet erosion set in as Cotton's white bulls marched south, and gold fever gripped the hills. State laws in Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee pierced treaty shields. Georgia's 1829 Act extended state jurisdiction over Cherokee territory, nullifying tribal laws and banning Cherokee assemblies, all while planters eyed fertile valleys for enslaved labor. An animated map traces the shrinkage successive sessions from 1798 at Tahlequah to 1819 at Sycamore Shoals. Whittled Cherokee holdings from millions of acres to a beleaguered heartland, not by conquest, but by the slow bleed of negotiation under duress. Legal resistance formed the Cherokee Bulwark in Cherokee Nation v. Cherokee Nation, Georgia in 1831. The Supreme Court deemed the nation a distinct community with rights to sue, though it stopped short of full sovereignty. Worcester followed, voiding Georgia's extensions as unconstitutional repugnance to federal treaties. Marshall's words rang clear: the Cherokee Nation is a state, though wanting in some of the attributes of sovereignty. Yet federal power proved selective. Jackson's administration turned a blind eye, prioritizing Southern alliances over judicial decree. A historical quotation from Jackson underscores the rift. In his 1830 message to Congress, he framed removal as benevolence. It will place a dense and civilized population in large tracts of country now occupied by a few savage hunters. The decision's stillborn enforcement revealed limits, as Georgia jails held missionaries Samuel Worcester and Elizur Butler, freed only by compromise, not compulsion. The Treaty of New Echota in 1835 crystallized internal division. A faction known as the Treaty Party, led by Major Ridge, his son John Ridge and Elias Boudinot, affixed signatures on December 29th to a document ceding all Cherokee lands east of the Mississippi for $5 million and new territory in what became Oklahoma. This minority act, forged in secrecy without National Council sanction, promised annuities and schools, yet ignited schism. Principal Chief John Ross and the vast majority decried it as fraud. Their memorial and protest to Congress in June 1836 bore 16,000 signatures. Ross, writing with anguish, "Our hearts are sickened, our utterance is paralyzed when we reflect on the unspeakable wrongs which we have suffered." The Senate ratified by a single vote, underscoring the treaty's frail legitimacy. Visuals evoke the parchment's stark ink, overlaid with facsimiles of petitions' names, cascading like silenced testimony, drowning the majority in procedural tide. Rising action shifts from ink to iron paper to bayonet. The treaty's 2-year deadline for voluntary emigration lapsed in 1837. Holdouts faced military edict under President Martin Van Buren. In May 1838, General Winfield Scott arrived with 7,000 troops to orchestrate the roundup. His orders enjoining humanity: "Cherokees, the President of the United States has sent me to aid you in removing." Contrast rang hollow against reality. Stockades rose as makeshift prisons in Georgia's summer heat, holding thousands in squalor disease. Rife among the confined. Reenactment staging captures the grim logistics maps, pinpoint collection points in New Echota, Fort Cass, Rattlesnake Springs, and Fort Payne, where families surrendered plows and pots for uncertainty. 17 detachments formed the March West, threading land and water routes across 9 states to Indian Territory, harried by autumn rains, turning paths to mire and winter gales, stripping leaves from skeletal trees. Logistics faltered. Supplies lagged contractors skimmed funds, routes diverged from Tennessee river barges to Ohio crossings, each mile a gauntlet of exposure. Missionary Dr. Elizur Butler, who accompanied one party, later tallied more than 4,000 Cherokee deaths during removal. An eyewitness gauge of toll rather than census precision. Nearly 1 in 5 perished from dysentery, pneumonia, and frostbite. Infants swaddled against maternal chests succumbed, first elders collapsing in traces, children burying siblings by trail's edge. Intercut accounts layer the cries. Soldier Private John G. Burnett recalled in his 1890 reminiscence, "I saw the helpless Cherokees dragged from their homes." Missionary Evan Jones noted the road strewn with the dying and dead. Cherokee survivor Rebecca Nugent whispered in oral history, "We hid in the bushes when soldiers came, but they found us all." Specific incidents sharpened the suffering. At Mantle Rock on the Kentucky side of the Ohio River in December 1838, one detachment stalled for weeks, ferry operators exacting exorbitant tolls that drained scant resources, bodies piling in the chill. More than a dozen froze their graves unmarked, save by frost. Testimonies, distinguished sources. Cherokee oral histories preserved in the Eastern Band's archives speak of mothers' laments in the tongue of Sequoia. Written memoirs from Boudinot kin detail wagons mired in mud. Official reports from Scott's adjutants tally wagons and livestock cold arithmetic over human fray. Voices on the trail multiply a chorus fractured yet insistent. Present-day shots of Mantle Rock slab-like formations, river waters murmuring indifferent clash with historical sketches of huddled form, Mama's maps tracing detours through Tennessee's Smokies and Arkansas's bottoms. The landscape, reshaped by highways and harvests, muffles easily. Markers roadside whisper facts to wind demanding pause amid motion. Climax arrives in Indian Territory by early 1839. Detachments coalescing near future Tahlequah survivors gaunt with grief and ague. Political reckonings erupted. Retribution shadowed the Treaty Party Major Ridge John Ridge and Elias Boudinot, slain in June 1839 by avengers from Ross's faction, their blood sealing a fracture born of duress. John Ross steered the remnants toward cohesion, convening a national council amid canvas tents. The Trail of Tears etched not merely federal decree, but a nation's splinter under pressure, then its dogged reweaving. Survivors who never left complicate the narrative. Around 1,000 Cherokee evaded the dragnet or clung to holdings via wartime alliances and private deeds, notably under William Holland Thomas, a white advocate who secured their North Carolina enclave through the 1866 treaty. The Eastern Band endured on fragmented land, state laws hostile, yet porous. Split-screen contrasts thrive Oklahoma's Cherokee Nation heartland, with its capital echoing new Echota's design beside Qualla Boundary's misty ridges, two survivals forged in removal's forge. Act 2 closes on memory's precipice, shifting from 1830s immediacy to late 19th century silences. Early schoolbooks recast removal as manifest necessity, human ledger minimized, public monuments lionized Jackson-Sonstein. The guiding question recurs: whose version etched the national tale, the victor's gloss, or the archived Cherokee pleas? The physical march halted in 1839. Yet the contest over hearing those cries ignited then a struggle threading into our now. Immediate aftermath demanded rebuilding from exile's ash. In Indian Territory, the Cherokee refounded at Tahlequah by 1839, a capital of hewn logs, a constitution revised in 1839 to affirm sovereignty, schools reopening under missionary auspices, churches ringing with hymns in dual tongues. Continuity pulsed. The Cherokee Phoenix revived as the Cherokee Advocate in 1844, printing laws and laments. Demographic scars lingered, population halved from 21,000 in 1835 to 10,000 by 1840 per tribal censuses. Cultural sinews strained by lost elders and sundered clans. Yet language endured in council ceremonies and stomp dances reclaiming ground. Archival images flicker ink-dipped quills drafting bills, daguerreotypes of Ross in frock coat paired with today's institutions. Tracing unbroken line, the Cherokee National History Museum housing petitions, yellowed but unyielding. Parallel in the East, the Eastern Band navigated survival through guile and grit. Thomas's advocacy bought time, federal recognition solidifying post-Civil War, their community, a testament to rooted resistance amid policy's sweep. Presence there upends tales of total exodus, underscoring survivance as dual-path exiles forge and homelands hold twin threads of one history. Long-term United States memory navigated silences toward fractured recognitions. For much of the 19th and early 20th centuries, popular recall framed Indian removal as progress's price cost tallied in footnotes. Jackson's biographies lauded his vigor, Cherokee agency erased. Mid-century scholarship pierced the veil. Grant Foreman's 1932 Indian removal chronicled logistics as cruelty. Cherokee activism in the 1960s, echoing civil rights marches, demanded centrality. The shift accelerated. In 1987, Congress designated the Trail of Tears National Historic Trail under the National Trails System Act, encompassing roughly 2,200 miles across 9 states, honoring 17 Cherokee detachments as emblem of national failing. Memory work flourishes from Cherokee hands, the Cherokee Nation's Trail of Tears. Art in Motion exhibit revives stories through beadwork and ballad. The Eastern Band's Museum of the Cherokee. Indian immerses visitors in syllabary scrolls. Language revitalization classes echo prayers once whispered on the march. Annual remembrance walks trace segments feet on earth, reclaiming narrative. A contemporary educator from Tahlequah reflects teaching removal means honoring the ancestors' strength, not just their sorrow. It is our sovereignty alive in every lesson. For Cherokee people, the Cries infuse living identity policy briefs, citing 1835 as precedent for today's water rights battles. The wider American public grapples with uneven hearing. State curricula vary. Texas texts softening agency, while Oklahoma mandates depth. Documentaries like PBS's We Shall Remain amplify voices, yet commemorations cluster regionally. Markers overlooked by tourists chasing antebellum ghosts. Historians now wield terms like ethnic cleansing or genocide. Scholarly debate weighing intent against outcome. The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum contextualizes removal as precursor to systematic displacement, though consensus eludes on precise nomenclature. Accountability beckons beyond plaques. Recognition pairs with calls for treaty fulfillment. Land returns modest yet mounting sovereignty, affirmed in rulings like McGirt v. Oklahoma in 2020, reserving half the state for tribal jurisdiction. Synthesize the layers. To answer the title's query, does America still hear the cries? The historical wails resounded along 1838 routes, muffled by policy's march. National tales long distorted them into inevitability's sigh. Today, Cherokee scholarship, legal victories, and trailside vigils press for resonance. In sacred spaces, Cherokee Nation gatherings, or marked trail segments, clarity rings. Elsewhere, echoes compete with progress's roar, demanding deliberate ear. Return to the sound motif, evolving from winter's crunch to present voices. Cherokee citizens naming ancestors in council, historians parsing Worcester's writ, students in Qualla reciting Ross's protest. The invitation lands understated. Hearing the cries today entails facts etched deep treaties, honored as living bonds, contemporary sovereignty, saluted beyond past's pity. A quiet image endures, a modern trail marker beside a bustling road. Traffic blurring into haste, the camera steady, granting space for choice. Rush onward or halt and truly listen.